Misty Valley Cooperative presents When We Were Gone Astray. The paths of the world twist and turn. They divide and converge, taking you to unexpected places. Welcome to the haunted town of Assembly, and to the strange lands around it. The days are growing shorter, and the nights are chill. So put another log on the fire. Find a comfortable chair. Sit back. Relax. Listen. Chapter 15. Rain. I'm dreaming again, thought Fletch. I'm down the orchard well, dreaming the same dream, over and over. He tossed in his sleep. 4 strange faces, ancient and patient, looked up from the depths, but the beasts were bound to their lamplit vigil. The young king, like a carved effigy on his stone bed, did not stir. Was this the room beneath the church, or the hall at the world's end, or the room at the end of the hall? He could never be sure with dreams. Fletch rose from bed. Walking to the door, he opened it and looked down the dark hallway. A pale, unsteady gleam flickered through the gap of the door to the yellow room. He could detect the odor of a kerosene lamp. "Jared?" he whispered, and as he uttered the name, the light faded. Fletch opened his eyes and found himself still in his own bed, surrounded by the light of the chill morning. He got up and began to dress for school, feeling unwell, unable to eat the breakfast Mark had prepared. "Don't worry about it," his father told him. "Stay home. That's an order. You're wearing yourself out." Fletch looked up at Mark, acknowledging his weariness. "Dad, I'm so worried. I think I'm going to disappear, and I have the feeling it will probably be soon." "We all know it's bound to happen," said Mark. "That's something both Doc and Betsy agree on. But you don't have to worry about us, Fletch. We're prepared for that. I'll be okay, and so will Silver." "How can you be sure?" Mark touched his cheek. "Because you're my son, and you're alive. You'll be alive even when you're gone. You'll be living in another town, as if you've moved away. But that's something that happens in all families eventually." Fletch felt tears start in his eyes. "I don't know what to do about Silver. It's like we've broken up, only there's no anger. He's distant now, and it hurts. He never touches me if he can help it." Mark nodded. "He's doing his best. It's something you'll simply have to bear." Following his father's instructions, Fletch attempted to rest, though he remained filled with worry. He listened to old 78 records on the hi-fi in the parlor, providing a close presence for his father, which he knew was deeply, if silently, appreciated. The gospel songs and sea shanties sounded eerily disembodied, and the pops and scratches at the end of each recording seemed to form short, repetitive words, like faint voices heard through a patter of rain. The bridge, the bridge, the bridge. Later, he took a brief walk down to the edge of the lake, then around to the church, unconsciously retracing the steps he had taken on the day they had first moved in. The church door was unlocked, as always, and it opened smoothly. The air within smelled of beeswax candles and old polished wood. He took the pew he was accustomed to share with Silver and tried to pray. "What should I do?" he wondered aloud. "What do you want?" The answer seemed to echo his own question. What will you have?" Fletch gave the only response he knew. "I want to make things right," he whispered. He waited in the silence, keeping still and listening. His hand slipped to the silver crucifix he had worn beneath his shirt since Fletch's death. Who was the androgynous figure on the cross, if not Christ himself? "Don't worry about your disbelief," Betsy had told him once in a dream. "Just be what you are." It seemed he had nothing more to go on. Liz came for lunch, and the three of them spent the afternoon raking and burning leaves around the church. Fletch tended the fire, enjoying the heat, listening to the rasp of the metal leaf rakes, the thump of the wheelbarrow, and the rustle of the tarp Mark used as a dragging sheet. He retrieved an old rake handle from the fire and saw that it was the one he had carried on his midnight walk to the bridge. He set it aside, wondering if it might help him cross over this afternoon. The red oak leaves easily caught fire, but the smaller water oak leaves stuck together in a damp mat, smoking and sulking. He picked up a blazing leaf. Was this same leaf burning back home across the bridge, without him there to tend the fire? Was someone else tending it? Or had things changed in unimaginable ways since his disappearance? How many places were out there along the forked ways? And who had made them? Could worlds simply appear out of the blue? The afternoon drew on, and Betsy herself appeared, wearing a cloak, carrying a cane pole, looking like a wise woman from one of Silver's fairy tales. "Think," she ordered him, as they sat together in the parlor. "You've been noticing so many strange things, but we keep coming back to the bridge." "I can't stop thinking about it," he admitted. "Every time we cross, I wonder if I'll vanish." "I suppose you haven't tried going back?" she asked. "We went there with Silver a couple of weeks ago," he told her, "the day after I got here, I think. We tried walking across it to see what would happen, but nothing did." He hesitated, remembering. "Except, on the way, I got dizzy in the truck, just as we pulled over at the bridge. I caught a flash of something." Betsy looked at him, curious but patient. "It was raining. I was high up. The town was below me, my town with the train." He thought back, remembering the pain and terror which had overwhelmed him. "My hands hurt." "Was there blood?" she asked. "No, but that did happen once, right after Halloween, the way it does with Silver." "I thought as much." Her brow furrowed. "I think you were close to shifting back. Fletch said he could almost see through me." Betsy stood and reached for her cane pole. "Shall we visit the bridge? Perhaps you ought to try again," she said. "If there's a way over, you are the only one who can find it." As they took the garden path and passed through the blue gate, Fletch's nervousness mounted. He said nothing as they descended the hill, merely looked ahead, as Betsy did, wondering what might happen. "When I was a girl, I traveled by accident. It was a difficult time for assembly, and there were no old ones to show me the way." She paused, looking at the surrounding buildings, as if envisioning them in another time. Fletch waited, holding back his questions, but Betsy didn't speak again until they reached the bridge. "A strange thing happened one evening when I was here," she said. "It was beginning winter, and the world was gray. I remember the sound of my shoes on the boards of the bridge. Trip, trap, trip, trap." Fletch heard the muffled echo of footsteps in the enclosed space. He saw the dark within, the pale world without. He followed, trying to see what Betsy was remembering, then wished he had a blindfold instead. This was very much like moving through the labyrinth. A light patter of rain sounded on the roof. A shape formed from the damp air. A girl stepping through the shadows, her hands red with blood. "Little Betsy?" Her voice was soft, not at all like the creak of a rusty hinge. The girl's silhouette shimmered in a haze of light. She extended her hand. "Do you see her?" Betsy asked, and Fletch nodded, trembling. "I don't want to see." The girl's hand moved forward, offering her small sister the gift she held. In her palm lay the heart of a child. Best part. Fletch shook his head, trying to blot out what he was seeing. The afternoon returned. He smelled the odor of burning leaves all the way from the pastorium. "I thought it was Crowther," Fletch whispered. "I was sure of it." "He helped her, certainly," Betsy acknowledged. "He worshipped her." I didn't want it to be her," Fletch protested. "I wanted it to be Crowther, or even Jarrett. But it was Nellie all along." "Crowther was a murderer from the beginning," Betsy told him. "Nellie killed and ate, as was her way." "Why did you bring me out here to show me this?" he asked. "It wasn't my intent," she said. "You'll find thoughts rise without your asking. Memories of wrongful deeds and abandoned places. I've learned to put them down, and so will you. But we are here for a different purpose." She took him onto the bridge. "Close your eyes and imagine your home. The covered bridge is around you." With some reluctance, Fletch allowed himself to reimagine the enclosed darkness, the familiar wooden boards, crosswise, and the parallel rows of long planks, smoothed by the friction of automobile tires. He took his time, slowed his breathing, and permitted the details to accumulate. Finally, he could imagine the place clearly. He felt that if he extended his arm, he would be able to touch the rough wood of the beams. He opened his eyes, and the bridge was there. Betsy took his hand. "It's here," he told her. "Can you see it?" "I can." "Betsy, I'm afraid." "Do you want to go back?" she asked him. "I don't know." "Come along," she said. "Walk with me." She held his hand as they moved through the long, hollow space. The day beyond looked the same as the day behind them, but he knew it wouldn't be. They stopped at the end of the bridge, looking out. The air seemed slightly different, without the threat of rain. "When you need it," Betsy said, "the way is here. This is your passage, though I'm not sure what will happen if you take it." Later, after supper in the Kendalls' cabin, Fletch described how he had looked through the frame of the bridge to the place beyond. It was like a tunnel, joining this version of assembly with mine. Silver remained thoughtful. He rinsed one of the blue willow plates and handed it to Fletch to dry. "Do you think you could make it appear again?" he asked at last. "I guess so, probably." Silver took the plate and put it away in the cabinet. "Let's try. I'd like to see it." They finished putting away the dishes and left Liz and Mark in the parlor listening to National Public Radio. "Back in a bit," Silver told them as he took the cane poles from the front hall. "We're going into town." Mark looked up, and Fletch saw the question in his eyes, the ache of the loss he was willing to accept. "I'll be back tonight, Dad," he promised. "I'll keep the porch light on," his father told him. As they approached the truck, Fletch glanced at Silver, trying to measure the emotional distance between them. "Do we have homework?" he asked. "Not much," Silver replied. "Some world history questions, a few proofs in geometry." "I've been thinking about geometry," Fletch told him. The bridge and the forked ways, all those spirals. They're probably non-Euclidean. You were supposed to be resting. I tried, Fletch muttered. No rest for the wicked, I guess. This brought a smile from Silver, who opened the truck door for him. They made the short drive to the bridge and got out. Fletch took hold of his cane, remembering the things he had seen with Betsy. "Are you feeling dizzy, the way you did before?" Silver asked. "No, just nervous and a bit cold." Fletch looked across to the mill and the shadows of the hill rising beyond. "Let's go halfway, then see what happens." They walked to the center of the span, where Fletch stood still, trying to ignore the bite of the wind. He imagined wooden boards beneath his feet instead of concrete. He imagined the slanting timbers held in place by wooden pegs. The wind stilled, but when he opened his eyes, he found nothing had changed. "I don't think," he began, and then he stopped as the walls and roof took shape around him. "It's okay," Silver told him. "Maybe your battery's low. We'll try another time." "Silver, it's here." "You mean you can see it?" "Yes. Can you?" "No." Silver looked around. "Everything still looks the same." Fletch stretched out his hand and touched the old timbers, finding them solid. He reached for Silver's hand and took it. "Hold on to me, just for a moment." "It's there," said Silver. "Look, it's bright at the end where the street lamp is." They went toward it, stopping well within the shelter of the roof. Fletch took another cautious step, but Silver held him back. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't go yet. I just thought I'd see if we could step through." "I'm afraid you'll disappear." Fletch moved back, away from the gleam of the street lamp. "Do you want to try on your own? Maybe now that it's here, it will stay for you, too." He could feel Silver's hesitation. Then Silver slipped his hand free. The pool of light expanded, no longer blocked by the roof of the bridge. Fletch reached out and touched the familiar concrete parapet. The wind returned, and he shivered. "Well, now we know," said Silver. They walked back to the truck. Silver switched on the headlights, turned around, then drove toward the highway. Fletch wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence which had fallen between them. Silver seemed unreachable, so sad and far away. They turned at the Kendall's rutted drive, mounted the crest of the hill, and descended into the valley, at last slowing to a stop by the porch. "Ready to head out?" Mark asked, meeting them at the door. "School tomorrow, you know." Fletch nodded. He looked at Silver, who was intent on scraping the mud from his boot against the stone steps. "See you in the morning." "Okay, I'll see you." Fletch spelled out the word separate in his head, and found he hated it. On the way home, he wedged himself between the window and the back of the seat, pressing his face against the chill of the glass. He kept his eyes closed, avoiding conversation. He followed his father inside and went down the hall into the kitchen to get something to drink from the refrigerator. On the countertop he noticed a folded piece of yellow paper wedged beneath the bread box. He opened it and saw that it was the page Betsy had showed them 2 Sundays before, on the day Fletch had died. Nellie's penmanship was neat along the line. "See how still she stands." He thought about making tea, but didn't really want to wait for the kettle to boil. He poured a glass of orange juice and took it upstairs. One of the overhead bulbs made a pinging sound and went out, so he lit the lamp by his bed, turned down the flame, and began to undress. Images jumbled together in his mind, and he tried to separate them, but found he couldn't. The delicate anklet Silver sometimes wore, which made her bare feet lovely and mysterious, the ripple of her laugh, the weight of Silver's head in his lap as he stroked his hair before the fire. Fletch put on his bathrobe and went downstairs to the hall. He lifted the receiver from its cradle and dialed Silver's telephone number. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." "Silver, are you okay?" "Not really. Are you?" "No. Do you want to come over?" Fletch could hear the hesitation on the other end of the line. "I'm really tired," Silver said at last. "I'm going to try to sleep, but I'll pick you up for school." "Okay." Fletch climbed the stairs and blew out the lamp in his room. He went to sleep on the rug in the library, wrapped in a woolen blanket, listening to Dowland. "More coffee?" his father asked in the morning, pouring it black into a handcrafted mug. "Thanks." Fletch sipped the coffee and looked through the mail on the table, opened the new copy of National Geographic. "Do you ever wish you could just have an ordinary life?" "Nobody really has an ordinary life," his father said. "There's always something going on, either a miracle or a catastrophe." "Or both at once," said Fletch. Mark ruffled his hair. "You've been through strange things this year, and this is the strangest of all." "Sometimes I still think I'm an imposter, Dad." His father nodded. "I understand, but I don't feel that way about you. You're my son, and I love you. I think you're pretty close to perfect." "But you miss him." "Of course, always." "I miss him too. It seems like it's been forever." The morning rain was cold and steady, graying the November air. In the school parking lot, Fletch sat with Silver in the truck, wishing he had thought to bring an umbrella. "We could walk, like we did before," Silver suggested. "It was summer then," Fletch reminded him. "This rain is almost like sleet. They should have canceled school." "Come on." Silver went around and opened his door. Fletch drew his coat over his head and scrambled out. The rain hit them like a wall. Water churned in sheets across the parking lot. Dimly he could make out the front of the building. He didn't walk. He ran like mad, trying to get ahead of Silver before the other boy could catch his sleeve. As he leapt, he tripped on the edge of the concrete walk beneath the breezeway and stumbled. Silver caught and steadied him. Fletch felt the brick wall against his back, felt Silver's hands tugging the collar of his coat into place, felt the rain on his lips as Silver kissed him. Fletch put his hands against Silver's shoulders, but he didn't push him away. He held him close. "I'm sorry," Silver whispered. "I didn't mean, I couldn't—" But he couldn't speak, because Fletch was returning the kiss, all his confusion and uncertainty and desire tumbling together. Finally, he let him go. Silver's hair had matted about his face. His coat was drenched with rain. They stared at each other, unable to find any words of explanation. The words came from beside them. "It's about time," said Renee, "but you'd better break it up and come inside. Everyone is staring." The Right Thing. "Silver's ready for Saturday," Liz told Betsy as they left Winder, "but I'm not sure I am." "It will be hard to bear," Betsy agreed. "Harder for you than for Silver himself. But the day will end, as other days have ended." "Yes, Betsy, but what comes after?" "Much of that will be up to him. I'll help him, but he will make his own way." "What will you do, Betsy?" You've been the Paraclete all your life. I will do 2 things. First, I will see Fletch safely home. Then I will deal with Crowther Wills. After that, there are a number of possibilities. Liz glanced across at the old woman. Do you know if Silver will be able to travel? I suspect he may, but there's no way to be sure. Not every Paraclete is a traveler. He'll certainly learn many things. You know what he'll do if he travels, Betsy. He won't stand for what happened to Fletch. He'll go back and do everything he can to prevent it. Betsy nodded. Similar efforts have been made in other cases. The results are seldom those the traveler intends. Liz slowed for the turn to assembly. Betsy, are you speaking from experience? Of course, said Betsy, though I have learned to trace a thread to its end before I tamper with its beginning. Silver will become powerful, but I have seldom known him to act selfishly, even in matters of the heart. Liz was silent as they drove through town. She turned onto Willow Street, and as she pulled into Betsy's driveway, she spoke. You went back to save Nellie. I tried, the old woman admitted. I found myself unable to prevent her death, but I altered the effect. Nellie has spent nearly 80 years as something other than human. Do you think it was the right thing to do? Betsy allowed herself a brief smile. There have been times of doubt, but I'd say she's turning out well. Toward Patmos. As Crowther Wills traveled, his strength returned. Through the open door of the boxcar, he watched the years shudder past under the glare of the sun. Houses of timber and brick gave way to tar-paper shacks, lost among brown fields. Red dirt gullies split the wasted land. As the train paused at the depot at Quarry Ridge, he noticed a pair of red mules standing in the shade of a tin-roofed shed. Crowther liked the heat and dust. Even from a distance he could smell the dry rot of the unpainted houses, the slimy water in the cisterns. A mirthless smile stretched his lips, and his eyes glittered like chips of flint. One more stop would take him near enough to walk the rest of the way, though he would still be years from his destination. Arriving at Patmos, the Gainesville Midland slowed to a stop in 1913. Hatless, his bottle of whiskey shattered, Crowther cursed the inconvenience. But he was La Loup-Garou again, and he would be able to trace the pattern of the forked ways well enough to reach the house by nightfall. The blood of the Crimson Boy was sweet upon his tongue, and it gave him strength beyond measure. The boy himself was a wonder, but there were wonders aplenty in the world. Crowther leapt from the boxcar and skirted the platform, drawing barely a glance from the men perched on the wagons loaded with cotton bales. At the sound of a voice he turned quickly, startled, then angered by his own sudden fear. For a moment he was certain he would see the dead boy at his heels, pursuing him like some wild thing of the forest, a figure out of the old tales. Crowther had known the boy as a whisper in his ear, a shadow on his path, a ghost haunting every step of his long journey. "You're dead now," he whispered. "I cut your throat." But there had been the second boy, unlooked for, and this troubled him. He left the town and took the highway through the fields, his boots leaving prints in the red dust of the road. Before the moon rose, he had moved from autumn into winter. Tall gateposts rose before him, and Crowther's spirits lifted. He turned to follow the dirt track deep into the old plantation. When We Were Gone Astray is produced by Misty Valley Cooperative. It is the second book of the Forked Ways. The text and audiobook are copyright 2022 by Beau Farr. All rights reserved.